it's really a privilege, and obviously one of the highlights of my career that I'm speaking to Steffi and Andre today. I won't go through the list of titles that they won, the achievements. You mentioned them quite succinctly, and obviously covered everything. But I must kind of tell them both that I watched Steffi Graf win the gold medal at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. I was a reporter there, and then I watched 1992 Andre Agassi win the Wimbledon title. I think that was his first. So I've been keeping a watch on what these two have been doing, so to speak. But to come very quickly to the first question, Andre and Steffi, we are living in very unusual times. The pandemic. This is something that we've never seen earlier, probably never see in our lifetimes. Are you all homebirds? Are you all the outdoors type? How have you all coped with living in your own kind of lockdown scenario? It's tough, but can you share some experiences?
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's been tough across the board, for the entire world, for the sporting world. I've been very thankful that I've been heavily involved in education, because there's been a good outlet for me to figure out some solutions and the schools that I've managed to build. But I can sure tell you this time has caused us to all have to come together by sort of being separate, and that hasn't been the easiest thing in the world for anybody. It's made us better cooks at home, no question. It's made us closer as a family in many ways. But there's no secret answer to something no one has experienced before. Yeah.
I saw a wry smile on Steffi's face when you mentioned that you've become a better cook, or it's made better cooks of us. But any secret sauce he's developed, Steffi?
No, you know what? I mean, it's been a lot of struggles on a lot of ends, like us not being in person with you today. But it does have benefits of having the kids a little more at home, and there's been a lot more family time from taking hikes and taking walks together, spending, a lot of quality time, especially with our oldest going off to college here soon. So, we're trying to take the positives, but, when you look around the world and the struggles that from working to health, it's tough.
Yeah. What does it mean for tennis players at the elite level if you miss out on 6, 8 months, maybe a year, because of something which, frankly, very few people have understood what's happening in the world around them? And then you're suddenly confronted with this. I was reading an article of Simone Biles, the gymnast from the United States, and she's missed out a year on the Olympics. And she said, just coping with that thought, will I still be able, because she was prepared to win mentally a medal in 2020. Now, in that article, it came through, she was not sure whether she would be mentally all there for the 2021, just internalizing the whole delay. How do you think athletes at the elite level, like you all have been, what does it mean to be moved away from the sport for such a long period?
Well, I think the most difficult part about all of it for any athlete really is the unknowing, right? Because we're always so used to working backwards from goals and objectives and not knowing when you're going to be able to play or what the circumstances are going to be that you're trying to prepare for, both mentally, emotionally, physically, what it's going to look like. That unknowing creates the level of angst. And so you have to, it's a struggle sort of knowing where to give yourself breaks and where to push yourself. I got to say, I'm glad I never, whoa, we just lost light in here. I'm just going to wait. Let me see if I can get the lights back on. Hold on. I got to walk over here to get the.
Yep.
Lights went off. But sorry. These are the things we adjust for in these crazy times. But so that's been a big deal. Not knowing when to play. So I call it sort of a great equalizer, if you will. Because you take somebody who's the best in the world at something, they know how to get themselves in perfect place to do, obviously what they need to do. Now all of a sudden they don't have this information. They don't have, it's all new. So you get out there with no audience, and then all of a sudden the person that gets a little bit more nervous in a big environment is kind of dealing more with a calm environment. And so I kind of have seen this be quite a big great equalizer across many sports. And then you have those that are at an interesting time in their career where it's a real disadvantage. Yeah. You know, players that are older, you look at a Federer or maybe even a Serena, and you start to realize that missing this kind of time, you know, it tricks your body. Your body's getting older quicker because you're much older, and all of a sudden you're asked to just kind of shut down and then restart. Not going to be easy for some more than others. The younger, enthusiastic ones that have that engine that can keep pushing their body and their mind might just be the right time for them to float to the top.
So let me switch to the other end of the spectrum, Steffi. And, you know, we've talked of the elite athletes, but what about kids, 6, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds who are trying to grow into a sport? Naturally irrepressible, they just want to run around and, you know, roll in the mud and kick around, whatever else. And then suddenly they're locked up, you know. And then, I mean, you played at a very early age, so did Andre, and you probably know what it took to start so early.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, being locked up if you don't have this space or if you're not allowed to go out. I mean, I'm hoping that a lot of kids have found the way outside, you know, back on the streets, you know, kicking around maybe a ball, or, you know, I've seen the interest of people walking now. I mean, we have 3 dogs at home, and so I'm always out walking, and now I see suddenly so many more people being out there and seeing a lot more kids out there. It was tough for a little while when all the playgrounds were closed, and, you know, but you do see kids suddenly being out on the street and hiking and playing with each other. But, you know, even as we realize with education, with sports, you know, it's been a real challenging time, and parents that usually would be at work, you know, you're having to work from home, juggling the families, and you know, a lot of friends that been really having a hard time with you know, being there for the kids, suddenly having to learn school from home, but also having to work. You know, it's just opened up you know, just a completely different side. But I think one of the things that we've realized is how important it is to concentrate on your health, especially with the kids. You know, get them you know, moving, get them understanding the right kind of foods. Maybe concentrate on those things in that during this period where you know, it's most important.
Yeah, well, the dynamics of lifestyle dynamics have certainly undergone a change. But let me just now reflect, or let me just kind of probe a little on how, you know, your 2 personalities have kind of come together and then stayed. Let me first ask Steffi this. I mean, somebody who achieved really dizzying heights. You know, Sunetra at the start mentioned all the titles you won and stuff. And in all versions of the game, perhaps more than any other, you know, female tennis player of your time, and certainly perhaps of all time. And yet, you seem to move away from the limelight in a jiffy. You know, you were there and then you were gone. How did you, I mean, how did it happen? How did you manage that? A lot of people would clamor. I mean, they hang on for a lifetime, you know, but you just seem to give it all up.
Yeah, but I think, and through my career, I showed that I've been, you know, maybe more of a reserved and private person. So I think it was an easy transition for me to, you know, to move away from the career, even though I happen to be a lot more on the tennis court again, which I didn't quite expect, but in a different capacity. But, I don't know.
Oh, we got a little feedback here of a lot of noise. I don't know if somebody can manage that.
I think that's gone. I think that's gone. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no. So it, you know, I really looked forward to time after my career. I did something, you know, from when I was 4 years old, and it was such a big part of my life. I gave it all. I cherished so many moments. it is, the sport does take complete control of you, of your life. And I think I was really ready for,
Me.
Yeah, for you. Yeah, no, I was ready, and I was looking forward to it. And I think that was the biggest thing. I loved what I did. I gave it all, and I was ready for, Andre.
No, but this is something which I read somewhere, and I must ask first of all the veracity, Andre, and then you can tell us, what you meant and whether Steffi agrees with you or not. You said that Steffi was a step in the right direction for me. I was a step in the wrong direction for her, probably.
No, it's all.
Did you say that?
Was
it just?
I've felt that way many times. Let me say that I think that there's no question that when you go through life the way we both did, we both lived challenging childhoods. We both lived challenging careers. We both bonded very quickly, but we're also two entirely different personalities, which I think we highlight each other's weaknesses and we complement each other's strengths in many ways. And so we win more than we lose. We don't, I'm not regretful for one day. I can promise you that.
And do you agree with him, Steffi?
Totally. No, and I keep on saying, the sport gave us each other. It gave us our families, our life, and the ability to choose the time and how to spend it and really appreciate what we have.
And then if you think about it, how I really win is if she leaves me, I get half of everything.
That's not going to happen. So, you can count the stars, but it's not going to happen.
No, please.
I'll come to the charities because that's a very important part of your lives that you'll have been doing in your individual capacities as well as together. But I wanted to address a couple of more questions on tennis. Both of you all started very young. And does that in some way kind of put more pressure as you keep growing? I know today to become an elite sports person, you have to start young. You can't start at 18 and 20 and become a champion. It's not going to happen in any sport. But does that because it takes away a lot of your life, which other people live ordinarily, and you live in a kind of a biosecure bubble, so to speak, much before anybody else. Does that, or does it matter? Because the rewards are enormous, the fame is there, the money is there, etc. So this hardship is acceptable. How do you see it?
Well, that's a great question. I think the most important thing for any person to do, starting with a parent, is to really define what success really means. Because if it's about money or if it's about being the best in the world at a sport, then you're making a choice that is pretty tough, because you spend a third of your life not preparing for 2/3 of your life, and I think that's a very overlooked reality that happens when you start so intensely, in sports. So the balance is crucial. Else it becomes very one-dimensional, and that's why you see a lot of people struggle in retirement. And I think that's part of the reason, and I know we'll get there at some point, why I got into education, because I felt like my lack of choice, being forced into tennis at a young age and out of school, kind of left me very disconnected with my life. And during my career, at one of my lowest points, is when I decided to, give children with no choice that opportunity. And so, I feel like I was more lucky than I was prepared, because getting involved in this gave me a platform to move forward with my educational objectives. And we got to figure out a way how to get these lights on. I don't know how to. There we go. So for me, I think I was more lucky than good, because creating those educational opportunities for kids who really don't have choice in their life gave me the bridge for later. But yes, when you want to be great at something at a young age, which most sports does require early involvement. It does come with a price. But once we had our children, you know, I feel like our careers were over with, so to speak. So we got a chance to raise them too.
Yeah.
So this is when those scales kind of got more balanced.
So, Steffi, does that resonate with you or your experience?
Totally, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you know, there's so much you get taught. I mean, in tennis or in a sport, if you're, you know, there's a big part that's missing and a big part that you gain, and you know, I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but I do have to say there's a lot that helps you, you know, later in your next sort of career. I mean, it's unusual if you think about it. People start, you know, normally their careers when they're 28, 30. We already have been through a career, so we're now in you know, a completely different phase. But suddenly, you know, and I see it with a lot of the players and a lot of the girls that are close to retiring, that have questions. Okay, where am I go from here, right? Because, you know, tennis has been all that you've known, and you know, and it is focusing on all that you've learned in that phase, but it is not a traditional education that you walk away from, and so it does have other challenges. But like I said earlier, the benefit, and like Andre just mentioned, the benefit of us now being able to dictate, you know, our times, spending more time with the kids, and, you know, working on certain hours, having the freedom of working, you know, and choosing our work.
Yeah. Also, what's happened, and Andre, you were amongst the first who actually quite candidly spoke up about it, and this is now becoming a norm across sports, across disciplines, where athletes are talking about mental health. A lot of them are admitting to depression. You know, the perception from the outside for almost as long as I could remember, till the last maybe 10, 12 years, was that, hey, if you played sport, you know, you actually became mentally tough and strong. And, you know, you've conquered everything. And what is there to kind of feel depressed about? You know, it in fact prepares you for the most challenging situations in life. So how do you see that? What is the reason behind all this?
Well, you know, I think that you're right in the sense that sports teaches you how to problem solve. It teaches you how to build a very strong muscle, but it's a lot like the body. If you're only building one muscle, there's an imbalance. Yeah. And that imbalance is very difficult. So you give your entire self to a sport 24 hours a day, where even rest is just as important as training, and so your whole day becomes about one thing, and then you get out there and there's always immediate feedback, places to improve, things to work on. And then all of a sudden, when you unplug this activity, you know, it's almost like PTSD, you know, post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's like all of a sudden you're not getting the input, you're not getting the outlet of this intensity of engagement. And I suppose it's a bit like drugs and then no drugs. Life seems boring if you're not, you know, doing it anymore. And this feeling is a different part of a person's muscle, being able to be at peace with quiet, realizing there's a different rhythm to life now. You know, this takes time to build up the balance of the mind, you know, just like it does the body. So yes, sports makes you tough from one perspective, but it also, from the other perspective, puts you in a position where you need to disconnect, and you need to grow a different muscle. And I think it takes some time for some athletes.
Yeah. And Steffi, you coasted through your career. You know,
coasted. I'm happy that you can.
That's the way it looked.
Yeah. that you feel like that's the way it looked. But I mean, you know, it.
No, but you were so reserved. I mean, one never got the impression that you had anything but single focus. You know,
I was a good actress then maybe that should be something that I should get into. But I've had my ups and downs and challenges, and you know, tennis every day you go out on the court, and you strive to reach, you know, your limits, and it's it's difficult because you know, to find that emotional balance, you know, you might have it physically, but sometimes emotionally, you know, it's hard to day after day to ask the best of you, and you know, you have, especially as when you get on, you know, closer to the top. I mean, the expectations, the demands that you have, you know, you don't always feel that way, but you got to, you know, you got to still ask always the best of you, and that is really hard, and you don't realize the amount of pressure and that sometimes you ask of yourself, not even from the outside, but that you know, that the perfectionism that you have within you, that once you walk away from the sport, you don't, you know, understand really what you've been through. It might, you know, you always try to have that calmness, but you're far from having that equilibrium that you hope.
But do you think, Andre, do you think more and more athletes should come out and talk about mental health issues and social issues? Elite athletes.
Yeah, I believe that somebody needs to be true to themselves, you know, and in order to be true to themselves, you have to be self-aware. In order to be self-aware, you know, this has to be something you prioritize in your life. And we all, when we struggle, we all find our own forms of distraction, you know, and athletes pour a lot of this distraction into the intensity, as Steffi was speaking about with their training, and with, you know, you're always being measured by somebody else. And so when you're off training by yourself, you know, you don't know what somebody else is doing. So you keep asking the most of yourself without going too far. And so, you know, if you have the ability to slow down and to understand what you're feeling, yeah, I do believe it's healthy. Listen, we all live different experiences, but in my heart of hearts, I believe we all live the same journey. You know, it's just like what we're going through now with the pandemic. I mean, yes, it's nice that technology allows us to connect a little bit, but we all know that real connection is very important in life. I mean, the human touch, the eye to eye, the you know, the in person, right? And so these things are crucial to everybody, and we all struggle. It might look like a beautiful bed of roses because you're holding a trophy, but I can assure you that the pain and suffering that goes into it, you know, creates the same anxieties in all of us. So if you're able to make sense of that, and that's why I decided to write my book, because I wanted to understand my struggles and to express it, not that other people understand me, but that through me they might understand themselves better, you know. And so that was the objective. But yes, 100%, I believe everything should be transparent in our journey here, because it can only help each other to know that we're not alone in it.
Yeah. That's very profound, and I must mention here that I've read the book a few times, not just once, and it was very, very, you know, every time you read it, you find something interesting and new. So because I follow sport across disciplines, not just tennis, and it was of great interest for me to understand, you know, in fact, it was revealing that, you know, champions could also be subject to so much pressure and stuff. But so just continuing that before I come to the charities, Steffi, sport is, you know, you have to confront reality within a day. I mean, you don't have a lifetime. You enter a tournament, you lose in the first match, you're gone, you know. Yep. You win a tournament, you win a Grand Slam, the next time you enter the court, you might lose. So it can be very cruel at times, while it is also always fulfilling if you win, but it can be extremely cruel, and it's a harsh reality check almost every time you enter the court or any other arena. So is that something that frays your nerves? Does that prepare you better for life's challenges? How do you see it philosophically?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think you learn to put things in perspective, and you know, when you were just talking about, I mean, we were lucky that we were in a sport. Honestly, you know, you talked about earlier about a gymnast that has maybe once every 4 years a high, you know, a very important competition. We as a tennis players, you know, luckily we have so many chances throughout the year. We have from the Grand Slams, we have the big master tournaments. So there's like, you know, if we don't do well, at least we have, you know, the next week to make it up. The challenge is, you know, you do really well. There's only a very short period where you're able to enjoy the victory.
And I think
you have to prove it again.
Yeah,
you have to prove it again. You're back on the court. So I think that learning that through our career has given me, I think, you know, a perspective of the highs and lows to not, you know, live them as strongly and you know, take them as important as, you know, some might see it from the outside. And I believe taking that back to our lives now, you know, is, I think, you know, take it in literally day as a day. Don't, you know, look too far forward. Don't look too far back. You know, learn from the past, but don't live in it, as well as try to take the moment. And I think that's what has my sport probably taught me most.
That's well said. It's like it's taught us to live in the present.
Yes.
You know, because the present is the only chance you have at your future anyhow. In the past, there's no control over it. So that's well said, Steph.
Okay, so tennis players are not, you know, usually big on political statements. But for 20 years, Steffi Graf's Children for Tomorrow has been working with children with mental health issues and been holding outpatients clinics for free in Hamburg, for example. You know, I mean, so how did this come about? I mean, you know, the need to do something for the underprivileged or the, you know, not so blessed, so to speak. But it also is, in a sense, a political statement, you know, I mean, something that the state could take care of, or other, you know, powers that be.
That's correct. Yeah, well, I mean, I got into giving back. I mean, one of the things that you come to realize traveling the world through your sport is the inequalities that do exist. I mean, it's you know, we do see the tennis court here. We do see also the surroundings. We traveled the world, and you know, I gave back in different ways till I met one of the professors in Hamburg at the university that in helping the children with the inner wounds that once are not as visible. And he took me to meet some of the children's and hearing what they've been through and the challenges that they've had coming through war-torn areas, enduring incredible violence, traveled, you know, long distances to just escape what they had to endure at home, and just learning about the work he was doing and the difficulty on highlighting the inner wounds that when we look at the war-torn areas, you know, we do see the destructions, but we don't see really what's going on, you know, within the children, the families, the people living in it and having to start a new life and often, unfortunately, you know, creating, you know, something that's created as a new cycle of violence. So I wouldn't say that I'm involved in the political, it's not a political statement, but the work that we're doing is providing therapy for these children. So I see it more as the humanitarian side, but obviously the you know, if you look at the numbers now, we have only almost 80 million displaced people around the world. That's double from 10 years ago. That obviously has a political background. Absolutely, yeah. Yes. I mean, it is, but I'm trying to concentrate on the most vulnerable, the children that have to grow up in those surroundings.
So, Andre, actually, whatever Steffi said, and she said she's not kind of, the backdrop may be political, but she's not into political activism, so to speak. That said, actually, women tennis players have been more politically alive or vibrant, if I may say so. For instance, Naomi Osaka on Black Lives Matter, Billie Jean King, Martina Navratilova on gay rights, etc., etc. Men seem less likely to rock the boat. I mean, I know you've done a book which has rocked, which kind of caused a flutter. But generally, men tennis players seem to be cocooned and saying, why should we take a position? How do you explain that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't, when I see men and women and how they choose to conduct themselves, it's always a question to me why somebody isn't very clear and have a perspective, whatever it may be. I mean, I've always lived taking chances with how I felt, regardless how it was received, and in a lot of ways I made a lot of mistakes in that process, but I think ultimately it connected me with people more authentically, and as a result there's a lot of good that comes from the exploration of these conversations, as long as they're done through the paradigm of compassion. I think the mistake comes when these conversations are had
and
with
honesty.
Yeah, honesty. But these conversations need to happen, in a vibrant way, and in a compassionate way, and an authentic way, and an honest way. And I respect those that are willing to approach it that way. I mean, I totally respect Osaka for how she feels about Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. The statement itself. Now, does she know what it really is? I don't know. But maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. But the discussion needs to happen.
Yeah. But this is interesting, as a kind of combination of Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf. So I did mention what I did about men's tennis players, but Andre has been an exception in many ways. And while he's been very open about I keep coming back to the word open, but he's been very open about his life, his struggles, his problems, not once but twice over. You've been very reticent about anything. I mean, you've shared some experiences now. So is this a kind of a yin and yang, settlement that, I need to be cocoon, you be the guy who keeps talking, but maybe there are lots of similarities in the thought process which we don't know about. Is this a kind of formula that has been worked out, or what?
Yeah, I think we came together at a time when I think we knew each other pretty well already, and I think, like you said, I mean, there might be certain differences in how we handle things and personalities, but in all of the right things, I find that we have very similar thoughts, and I think that our priorities are very aligned, and even with raising kids, I think you learn so much about each other, and that maybe we didn't realize when we starting to know each other. But I think it's when we realized how much we were aligned in some of the thoughts and things, the way we have our values aligned, and so I feel like it's between the values, the respect for each other, and the trust in each other. It's working really well. Let's put it that way.
I think when you talk about yin and yang, I think there's just a lot to be said for being attracted to what you respect and what you're not. The discipline she's always shown in her career, is something that obviously my personality couldn't abide. I always had to go through my emotional process. Yeah. And even though it was an emotional process for her, her personality and skill set allowed her to go about it differently, and that's attractive. You learn, it's like it's the same but it's different, and I think she's gotten me to be a lot more thoughtful before I react. And
I've become a little more open.
Yeah, in other words, she wouldn't have done this 22 years ago. She wouldn't. So hopefully it's been a good impact.
Am I to understand that, the arguments in the house are won by Steffi now? That's it.
Happy wife, happy life. But okay. I gotta say, there is a discipline to not reacting. And I think tennis has taught us both that. So if we have a pressure moment where we might not see things eye to eye, our reaction is not to react. It's to. So that's been a big help.
Yeah.
So that's a great learning from sport, isn't it? That you've been through that process hundreds of times in your careers, and then you sense that issue coming up and say, hang on.
I need to take a little 30-second break. Yeah.
Okay, let me come to the Andre Agassi Charitable Foundation in Las Vegas, and both of you all are into that. So, and from all accounts that I've read, since I had to do the session, I was also reading, and the work has been exemplary. So, just tell us a little bit of the background. What started? What's been the outreach? Where do you see it going ahead?
Yeah, so I did touch on it a little bit as to my motivation. Why I felt like my lack of choice in life was a big deal. And when I saw a show on 60 Minutes that showed these kids who have no choice in their life because they didn't have an equal education, this was unconscionable to me. So I took out a big mortgage, a $40 million mortgage. I built my own charter school in the most economically difficult area of Las Vegas, which is the 5th largest school district in America. I have about 1,200 kids in the school. I have 3,000 on the waiting list. So through that process, and I think tennis combined problem solving, I started to say, wait a second, I have more kids that need the education than I'm providing for. So I felt like twice the failure. So I wanted to figure out how to scale it. And I got tired of waiting for government. I felt like philanthropy wasn't scalable. It's important, and it's especially if it's given at the right time, in the right place, in the right way. But we can still innovate as a society. So I took a societal daunting issue, which is the equality in education, and I went to the private sector and I said, don't give me your money, invest it. And what I can do with this is I can take it and I can build schools, because I'm not an operator, I'm not an educator, but I'm a facilitator. I can build schools for the best in class operators, and the money from the state follows the child to the school, which means there's revenue on day one. You don't have to incubate over time. Now, instead of playing landlord, through the tax-exempt bond market, we can refinance them out a purchase ability to buy back this facility to satisfy a like-minded investor, somebody that just wants a very small return but wants to see huge social impact. So in the last 10 years, through this model, we've built over 120 schools across the country in the most challenged areas. Now, through that process, I've realized in all these schools, they have one central sore spot, and that is early childhood literacy and English second language learning. If we can figure out a way to cross that Rubicon quicker, the trajectory of these children's lives changes dramatically. So I went to Stanford and I met with a neuroscience specialist on how brains work, and realized that we actually have the ability to understand how an individual's child's brains work. We just don't have a distribution vehicle that can actually send this out sort of through a technology-based platform. So I put together this company called Square Panda, and we're now actually, quite frankly, all throughout India, getting into schools there as well, that work with real-time PhD feedback on each individual's child's brain on how to learn English at a much faster rate. And in America, how to learn second language English at a faster rate, and how to be literate at a faster rate. So I keep going from one school to all these schools to now millions of kids. So you ask me what my plans are. I don't make plans, because I want to keep going. You know, I got a period of time here on this earth that I want to do the most I can for as many people as possible. And I feel like this has been a great outlet for me during this time. And this pandemic, quite frankly, has really highlighted this issue, the digital divide. How many people in your country, how many people in our country don't even have access to the tablets, to the Wi-Fi, to the ability to learn at home? You know, this is losing a generation, and we can't let that happen.
So before I move on to some questions on tennis, and then we've got some questions from the audience, what age did you start this? This
latest company?
Yes.
The latest company I started about 5 years ago, called Square Panda, and it's a platform technology that brings real PhD feedback in real time to each kid from the ages of 2 to 8 through a game-based system that helps the teacher teach at the highest level, because the actual machine learning is what's connecting the next step in phonics for these children.
Okay, so now a few questions on tennis. So Steffi, women's tennis seems to have undergone a change in pattern, which I was just making my notes. And, you know, from long-term dominance, we used to have, you know, Margaret Court, Billie Jean King, Martina and Chris Evert, Steffi Graf, long reigns, you know, for a decade and more. Now we've got Serena, of course, but we now have new Grand Slam champions in almost, you know, virtually every alternate tournament, which is quite unlike what's happening in the men's section. You know, men's section has been dominated by 3 or 4 players for the longest time one can think of. Why is that happening? The question is actually for both of you all. What do you sense? What is happening?
Well, I mean, definitely, I mean, on the women's side, there have been just a new crop of just young, you know, very energized young players. I mean, you look at Ashley Barty, that might be a little bit on the later end, but, you know, she came a little later to the sport, you know, choosing cricket in between, but an incredible talent. I mean, you see the last tournament, a young Polish player coming through, Swiatek. I mean, they're all you know, have a very complete game already, but still have a lot of energy. And it seems that we have quite a few of these young girls around that have energized the women's game in the last 3-4 years. I mean, you can say Serena is always a threat there, but you have an Osaka, you have Andreescu, you have all these different players from different countries that have come through and shining really brightly right now.
Yeah. And Andre, what's happening in the men's section? How do you read it?
Yeah, so, you know, for me, I would say that I wake up every day very grateful that the highlight of my career, the peak of my career, wasn't during this generation. Because if that was the case, I'd be on here talking about how I almost won this, I almost won that. But no, we have 3 guys that are arguably the greatest of all time. You could argue each one, and you can make a fair argument for each one. Yeah. And they're all playing at the same time, which is a remarkable era in tennis. However, there's one kind of player that always wins the day, and that's called Father Time. So time comes, and they're fighting it as well as I've ever seen anybody, and there's more for them to do. But you start to notice now these younger guys who actually are knocking on the door and believe, you know, from Zverev to Tsitsipas to Thiem to Medvedev. You know, you got these guys who are 20, 21, 22 years old who actually not just believe they can win, they're starting to expect it. You know, and so that to me suggests that there is a coming of a change of guard. But, you know, I'm out of the business of predicting these top 3 great ones, because they've really done things that the sport hasn't seen, and they'll probably continue that for a little bit longer.
So before I take the question, my final question is, you know, there's been a proposal by Roger Federer. We've seen that you know, the WTA and the ATP should merge, and there should be pay parity for, you know, that's one of the obvious and most pushed for outcome from the merger. But logistically, do you see that happening? Possible?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's logistically is a great way to phrase it, because I'm not sure about what all the challenges would be in the logistics. What I can say is, when men and women show up together, it's a win for the audience, because it's kind of like you get a little bit of everything. It's a win. But at the same time, tennis is a business, right?
Yeah.
Tennis is a business, and tennis provides content. And the value of that content is based on the consumer. So, the idea of equal pay isn't a human rights issue. It's not voting. This is an industry. There's investors and sponsors taking risk with their dollars and have a say in how they want to invest those dollars and where they want to put the bulk of that allocation versus the return. And the idea in any business is to create as much return as possible. So I think we kind of get a little lost in the conversation when it comes to technically when we talk about equal pay, because in some cases I know people that want to watch women more than men, and they should get paid more.
Yeah.
So as a result, I think there's a lot of moving parts to pull that off.
Steffi, you have an opinion on that?
Well, I completely agree with Andre on that. There's not much more to add. I mean, I have to say, in terms of the logistics, I didn't really pay, I haven't really followed it as closely to really comment on that.
Okay, so let me move on to the questions. Actually, I've been flooded with questions, so I'm going to read out a few. There's one from Kunal for Andre. As someone who had rivalries with people across two eras, and most notably with Pete Sampras, how is Federer versus Nadal versus Djokovic different from any other rivalry in the past?
Well, first of all, the first player I've ever played was Harold Solomon, then Jimmy Connors, then it went through Lendo, Edberg, Becker, then it went through Sampras, Curry, or Chang, then it went through Novak, Nadal, and Federer. So not 2, 4, at least a lot of generations. But what I would tell you is the day I played Federer, that was the day I realized that I was playing, the greatest player of all time at that moment, And I think since then, I played Nadal a couple times. Since then, Nadal has answered that bell. Nadal, I never got to see Nadal's best tennis, and I'm very thankful for that. I don't want to. I'd rather see it from my couch than see it from the other side, the worst seat in the house, which is the other side of the court. And then Novak, you can make an argument for Novak too, who has a winning record against both of them, who has done some accomplishments that they haven't done, who, by the way, in my opinion, can play on any surface and be the favorite to win, which is a remarkable thing to say during this generation. But overall, I mean, I think tennis is the winner. It's great for me to watch it and appreciate it, and I think we're all going to miss it.
Yeah, I mean, you all guys have been role models for these generations that have come after you all. So Kunal has got another question, and this is for Steffi. You retired 3 weeks before Serena Williams won her first Grand Slam title, almost as if you were passing on the baton. What do you feel about the constant debate about who's the greatest ever?
Well, I'm just happy that I'm in that equation. Her accomplishments have been incredible, and watching her through, such a long career, it's amazing. I felt like I was pretty ready at 29, 30 to retire, but seeing her mental toughness and kind of seeing how she is still so determined out there and pushing and eager, that just is mesmerizing to me. So in terms of the greatest of all, I'm so content and happy with the career that I had that it's not important, honestly, for me. But to be mentioned at it, is and recognized for the career that I've had. I cherish that, but life is so far away from tennis at this point that I don't lose any sleep about something like that.
If I had to post the same question on Twitter, it'll go viral and there'll be a debate for weeks on end. So whether
Yeah, no. I'm very happy with what I've been able to do in my career. So I'm very happy with that.
Apurva has a question. Apurva Sharma, what is your opinion on children taking up sports as a career, especially in India, as parents are still not very okay with the idea of children taking up, sports. They would rather that they spend time in academics. Andre, you've been a veteran. You've come to India so often, so you should be able to answer that.
Well, yeah. Well, what I can say is, there's a lot to be said for a quality of life. And what that means in different parts of the world, and in rural areas throughout India and in the cities. I mean, being able to speak English takes you from, in a caste system, takes you to a concierge at a hotel, which changes a life, which changes a generation. Education changes so much. What I worry about, generally speaking, about kids in sports is not the kids. I worry about the parents. The kids should play sports as an additive, and if they excel at it and it's natural for them to be self-motivated, but to decide what their child should do, I think removes I think that's the biggest crime in it, is forcing a child to say what they should care about. I mean, I think there's a responsibility as a parent to make sure they have an education first. And then I think there's a responsibility as a parent to allow their child to excel and be self-motivated in sports, as opposed to living vicariously through their children's sports.
So I've got a couple of questions for Steffi, and one is from Shubhajit Roy. He says, Steffi, will you write a book?
No. I think we've one book in the family is enough. But if I had to
open and shut, you have another book.
Yeah, no. I seen, watching Andre go through the process of, really putting 3-4 years into the book. I mean, the dedication and the time, and it was an emotional time as well. But I think I'm not quite ready. I don't quite see it. I feel like that book would be really thick. It's the difficulty of taking out what's important and what resonates with the reader. I mean, Andre, I think did such a good job. I couldn't live up to that.
There is another question for you, Steffi, which is from Arpita.
Yeah.
So, Steffi, you're an icon for women in India. Many of us have learned about sports, leadership, humility at the top after seeing you for so many years. How does one manage all this and constantly keep winning? Is there a mantra for it?
I think I said it earlier, it's every day is an opportunity to strive for something, to push your perimeters and live in that day as much as you can. If I've been given so many incredible things. I feel so blessed, and just live in the day and appreciate what you have.
And there's a question from Sanyukta, and I'll put this to Andre. What is more important, the drive to win or enjoy playing the game?
Well, I never really got to enjoy playing the game because it was, we were always measured by the scoreboard. So there was always this priority of obviously trying to win, which sometimes interferes with your ability to enjoy it. But for my children, for our children, I would hope that their connection to it and their experience in it, they value more than the highs and lows of what comes with it. But I can tell you, above and beyond winning on a tennis court, changing the trajectory of a child's future is by far the most rewarding.
There's a question from Samar Verma, and it's a question for you, Andre. It says, having coached Djokovic, is there anything you realized, even if much later, that you should have done differently with him as a coach?
Yeah. So it's interesting. No, not really. I mean, I think that what Novak needed was reason to fight and to care. It wasn't like he lost his game overnight. There was a lot of information that took him a while to process, unquestionably, because he has so many skills that he didn't have to think about the game the way that I thought about the game. But ultimately, me challenging him to stop working with him was a reason to give him a reason to prove something, and he took ownership of his own tennis, and he went back to his roots, almost like the classic with Rocky. He went back to his roots and found his fight, and that's always been what he's needed out there on a tennis court. If you ever notice him on a tennis court, he's always looking to get agitated at something, and if he can get agitated, he gets more locked in and he gets more focused. And so no, I just might have poked the bear a little harder, a little sooner.
There's a question from Salil, and this is more, from a parental point of view. What advice would you give parents about talking to kids or how to react to the pandemic? I'm sure this is meant for a question about very young kids. I don't know how old your kids are. Are they?
Ours are 19 and 17. So it's at least they were old enough in terms of school learning online, that they were ready for it, they were equipped for it. When I talk to some of the friends that have younger kids, and the challenges of teaching them and advocating, actually being on the screen all the time, we still hope that the kids grow up a lot more away from the electronics, and suddenly you have to make it have to bring them to it, which is a challenge in itself. But I don't know if
the only thing I would say is I think children have taught us how to handle it better, because children are children. They have a tendency to live more in the present than anybody, than adults. It seems like as we get older, we learn to complicate things. Children keep it pretty simple, and I don't think they even know they're struggling. But you just try to make sure that you can manage their life around them so that they can grow through it, productively.
Well, I'm deluged with questions, but I'm just going to now restrict it to two more, because this can go on endlessly. There's one from Abha. Do you see sports at schools changing because of the pandemic? And if so, how? For instance, kids are not getting into the swimming pool. Contact sports are now still, they're not kind of encouraged by schools and parents and coaches, etc., etc. Do you see a paradigm shift happening in the world of sports?
Well, I can say there's been an interruption of great proportions, both on a highest level and also, for children and sports in schools. And listen, we cannot afford to lose sports in schools. We cannot afford to lose arts in schools. You never know which button you need to flip for a child to have that be their reason to work so hard with their academics. So I think once there's a vaccine, and once we understand that there's less fear that maybe exists tied around the possibility of contracting COVID, I think we can. I think the fear comes down, and I think the engagement's gonna pick up. But I don't believe our school system is broken, no question, as a whole. But it's not so broken that we're going to forget how important it is for a kid to be active and to be outside and to compete.
Oh, totally. I mean, all the studies, there's been so many studies that even, having sports integrated in the school day, how much that does for your concentration. And you can't take that away from the kids.
So here's my final question, that's to both of you all. What is your biggest regret, if there is, and why is that a regret for both of you? You had long careers. You've had a
I have
long.
no regrets. I'm sitting here, I mean, next to him, you know, 2 beautiful children. I'm out. I'm good. No regrets here. Go ahead.
Mine would be, you know, I should have attempted to get her to say yes about 10 years earlier.
Well, you know, I think you won the argument for tonight, whatever else may happen, or maybe for the next week. I don't think Steffi will raise the issue over the next week at least. But thank you, both of you all, Andre and Steffi, for being so candid and so open, and you know, just being with the viewers of Hindustan Times and on this leadership summit, and sharing your thoughts about a range of issues, starting from the pandemic to tennis, to mental health in sports, and you know, obviously the charitable work that you all are doing, and which has a huge impact in wherever you all are doing it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.